Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Dialogue. I'm Taimur Shamil. ISIS is becoming a regional threat, and recently we have seen that ISIS, Daesh, has been carrying out attacks in Afghanistan as well as Pakistan. Just 5 days back, there was an attack on the Kabul University that was claimed by ISIS. Before that, there was an attack on a madrasa in Peshawar. There was an attack in Kabul on a study center. This is very important to note that ISIS has been carrying out attacks on innocent people. Earlier, a few months back, there was an attack on a Sikh temple in Kabul, Afghanistan, and there were innocent people doing their worship, going to their temple, and they were attacked. Around the same time, there was an attack in Kabul on a maternity ward. So, if we look at the attacks and the targets of ISIS, we see that these attacks, the targets have been the innocent people. So, there is a big question on the activity of Daesh in Afghanistan as well as Pakistan, and this is becoming a regional threat that needs to be dealt with. We'll be discussing about this growing concern for Pakistan as well as Afghanistan of ISIS operating on both sides of the border. At the same time, it is important to note that the violence generally in Afghanistan, it continues, and the security situation is precarious in Afghanistan. Although the intra-Afghan talks have started in a way, but we also see some sort of stalemate when it comes to the talks, because the violence from both sides, Taliban and from the government side, it continues in Afghanistan. And it is basically the layman, a common man, who is suffering in Afghanistan. But we'll be discussing primarily about the threat of Daesh in the region. Our second topic would be a latest statement given by the Indian Chief of Defence, General Rawat, on the regional situation. He has said that the situation can escalate, the conflict between India and China can escalate if China doesn't show any restraint on the India-China border. This is something very interesting. It is interesting because this is probably the first time that any Indian official has been so open and vocal about this conflict that has been going on between India and China. Recently, we saw the kind of embarrassment that India saw at Ladakh. Around 20 Indian soldiers were killed at the hand of the Chinese soldiers, and so the rift is there. Keeping in mind that recently there was this 2+2 agreement, BICA agreement between India and United States, and under this agreement, United States would provide India with real-time intelligence and information regarding aeronautical and spatial information. This is certainly going to disturb the regional balance as well. So, a lot of things that are going on at the moment. We'll be discussing about them with our special guest. We are joined by Lieutenant General Retired Naeem Lodhi, renowned senior defense analyst and expert on Pakistan national security as well as regional dynamics. We are also joined by Ambassador Aslam Rizvi. He is a renowned senior Pakistani diplomat and expert on Pakistan's foreign policy. We are also joined by Mr. Abdul Basit, renowned analyst from Singapore. Thank you for joining us, all of you. I'll start with General Naeem Lodhi. General Lodhi, talking about, first of all, ISIS. Recently, I just mentioned all the attacks carried out by ISIS in Afghanistan as well as Pakistan. Pakistani officials, specifically Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, has been pretty vocal about the role of spoilers in Afghanistan and in this role of spoilers in the Afghan peace process. ISIS is a very true picture of a spoiler. How do you see this rising threat of ISIS?
Thank you. I would rather rephrase it that ISIS is the visible face of the spoilers. Right. We must, try to ascertain two things: that what are the objectives of ISIS, and who are the sponsors of ISIS. The first thing is the purpose is simple, and that is to create misunderstanding between Afghanistan and Pakistan, the Afghan people and the Pakistan people. It is so straight. And appended with this purpose is that Afghanistan should stay under turmoil. And then we come to the second question, that who actually benefits if Afghanistan remains under turmoil.
Right.
I will not hesitate to take the name of the first benefactor, that is the United States of America, to further their policies in this region. They need Afghanistan in turmoil, whereas they want to leave Afghanistan in peace, I mean, for their own troops. But they would not like to, leave Afghanistan in peace because of so many factors. I can count them. It is China, it is CPEC, it is Central Asian countries, it is Russia. So somebody will have to convince me America like peace in Afghanistan. I would be very keen to listen to that argument. And second, of course, is India. You can say Indo-US nexus, we can call it,
Right.
and their objectives are also very well understood. Pakistan, and then bulwark against China, again against CPEC and all that. So you see, if we look at the present situation, if we know very well that the Afghan people are against ISIS, Afghan Taliban are against ISIS, and if Afghan government is also against ISIS, how are they surviving? Who's providing them all the wherewithal, and who's providing them the space? So it is the raw, assisted by NDS and assisted by CIA. I have no, I'm in qualms, saying this, and I'm quite clear that this is what is happening. And if we don't understand the situation clearly, and we cannot separate friends from the foes, probably we will be looking at this trouble, or you can facing this trouble for a very long time. Why do they select such objectives, as you said, innocent people? Because they are easier targets. Wherever you have, you cannot protect all the marketplaces and all the schools and all the colleges and all such places where so many people are there. So those are the easier targets. So my understanding of ISIS, my understanding of their objectives, my understanding of their sponsors is this, and I would like to listen to others. Thank
Right,
you.
right. General Lodi, this is very interesting. I'll also put this question about the regional security approach to you in a while. But before that, Ambassador Rizvi, talking about this threat of ISIS, when we look at the collaboration between Pakistan and Afghanistan, we have several mechanisms that focus on having a collaboration on intelligence sharing, let's say, and more cooperation on the security side. How do you think that we can activate those mechanisms that are there between Pakistan and Afghanistan and keep a check on these spoilers primarily, keep a check on Daesh, their infiltration, their movement on both sides of the border?
Well, as you know, we had a border agreement, and we see that there is a violation taking place already. The point is that Daesh, as you would recall, arrived in Afghanistan after they were kicked out from Syria. And they have been supported by India. And the basic, initially it was said that it was the CIA, India, and some other agencies were supporting the Daesh. But for the present time, we can see that Daesh and the situation in Afghanistan is rather complex, and there are those like Pakistan and United States who would like to see that peace return to Afghanistan. And as you know, the Doha talks let some hope that it will lead to that. But then, as the General Lodi also mentioned, there are the spoilers.
Right.
All right. Now, the main thing is, if you recall, that at one time there was a alliance of a northern alliance, India, Russia, and Iran in Afghanistan against the Taliban. But then, subsequently there was change both by the Russians and by the Iranians because of the assurance given by India that the Daesh they are supporting will not interfere in
But
their
Sir
own,
Rizvi, I
in
think
Iran or Afghanistan.
what General Lodi is, I think, focusing on is his point is that perhaps there's lack of political will. If let's say U.S. forces or the Afghan forces over there, they want to solve this issue, probably they can. So, do you think that this is the issue of political will because they don't want to do it?
No, that's not the case at all. It's not the political will. I'm sorry, I would totally endorse that. The government and those spoilers, in particular, the president there, the other agents there, they are in the warlords and the drug lords, etc. They are certainly in favor of the present situation. It is to their advantage. Yeah, but the main thing is that the Taliban themselves are very keen to have peace from there, and that is why they have been holding talks. The
Right, right.
only
This is very
reason that
interesting.
they are not, agreeing to have a ceasefire is
Right,
because they want
Ambassador-
some leverage for the negotiation.
Right, Ambassador Rizvi, please stay
So
with us.
the,
I'll move on to
the
Abdul Basit. Mr. Basit, looking at the situation, ISIS in Afghanistan, we're talking about this a true picture of a spoiler, rather face of spoilers, I would say, the way General Lodi has just mentioned. What is the nature of ISIS in Afghanistan and the way they are attacking people on both sides of the border? They would attack a madrasa in Peshawar and then they would carry out attack on Kabul University and other study centers, and specifically focusing innocent people. How do you see this?
See, this picture is complex in a sense that ISIS A operates on both sides of the border. B, ISIS has elements, former Pakistani Taliban as well as Afghan, Uzbeks and others. There are Indians in this group as well. And primarily they try to target on the sectarian and communal fault lines. For instance, hitting the Sikh Gurdwara in Kabul or the Shia population or Sufi shrines both sides of the border. This particular attack, which the last one that took place on Kabul University, is an interesting one in a sense that Amrullah Saleh was at pains in proving the point that it wasn't Daesh, rather it was the Taliban. And they even put those banners out there in outside the Kabul University that boycott Qatar process. Now, and he even put up a fake video claiming the attack on behalf of the Taliban. Now, all the expert community that focuses on such groups in Afghanistan, Pakistan, South Asia in general, within matter of minutes, they literally said this is a doctored video and it is pure propaganda coming from ISS. It's a fake video and there is no truth to it. The original video was available. Now, this clearly connects what General Lodi has just said, that the NDS connection is pretty much there. Now, in their prisons, if you talk to the people on ground in Afghanistan, they would tell you that if these people are arrested, various commanders of Daesh, Khorasan, they get a very favorable treatment within the prisons from Afghan security forces. Remember in Nangarhar, when there was a three-way operation going on against Daesh, there was Afghan forces, ground operation, Taliban operation coming from one side, and US was providing the air power. They were caught in a mountainous area about, I think, 2 to 3,000, and about 9 to 800 of them surrendered August last year. Now, they preferred surrendering to the Afghan forces rather than to the Taliban. Now, that again is very, very mysterious why they would lean towards the Afghan forces. They felt comfortable there. So I think if you try to connect these various dots, it becomes quite clear that boycott Doha, trying to attack Kabul University, then this video, all of it only tells you that someone is not happy with the Doha peace process. Someone wants Doha peace process to be scuppered, and then such proxies, they come into play. the just on the structure of the group, it's little complex in a sense that it is in the form of cells. There are cells scattered in different areas. Mostly this group is quite strong, has a strong presence in the northeast of Afghanistan. Nangarhar was their so-called headquarter, but they were thrown or driven out of that by the Taliban ground offensive. Currently,
Right.
they have their presence in the form of small pockets in the urban areas of Afghanistan. Now, as you know, under the US Taliban deal, it mandated Taliban not to attack Kabul and other provincial capitals. So Taliban have been desisting from
Right.
attacking urban areas of Afghanistan, particularly hitting the civilians. So that has left a huge vacuum, and ISS or Daesh Khorasan is trying to exploit that gap of urban violence in Afghanistan. So
Right. Right,
every
Basit.
now and then you see them coming into that vacuum. Earlier, you know, Haqqani network was quite famous for its audacious attacks against the US forces, particularly in Kabul. So they dominated the landscape. But under the deal, now they are under the obligation not to attack. So this is the vacuum that Daesh Khorasan is trying to exploit. A, to derail the peace process. B, to show their currency of violence, because the more attacks you do, you attract new recruits. So I think
Right.
this is
Right.
what is going.
Very, very interesting. This technical point that how come Daesh is more comfortable in the custody of the Afghan security forces, let's say NDS, and not with the Taliban. General Lodi, if this goes on, let's say in Afghanistan, then what is the future of peace and stability in the region? Pakistan has been trying for peace and stability. Afghanistan is trying for peace and stability. But taking your points from the earlier talk that you were mentioning, how do we deal with this big menace of terrorism, specifically Daesh?
I think Excellency and also Basil Saab has brought out the picture. They have painted the picture very clearly. If that be the picture, which I am agreeing to that, then I think it's we can make certain guesses that what is likely future of this peace and all that.
Yes.
There are detractors, and we have already counted them. But also remember there are some very strong pro-peace forces in the region, and let me count them. First of all, are the Afghan people, Afghan Taliban, Pakistan, Iran, China, Russia, and some Central Asian countries. So, unlike the last time, once the Americans left and there was a vacuum, there were no worthwhile, you can say, group which could work for peace. But this time, I think that is not going to happen. Especially the four countries: Russia, China, Pakistan, and Iran. If they get together
Right.
and they help Afghan to hammer out a peace within themselves, that is quite possible. So what I see is what is going to happen. The phase till the Americans leave Afghanistan will be the way it is now. You will see ups and downs, some uneasy peace. As Basis Saab said, I think Taliban are abiding by their whatever they have promised with Americans, and they had not promised a ceasefire with the Afghan government or Afghan army. So they had whatever they had promised. They are doing it. Once the Americans leave, the landscape is going to change, because then you will find more assertive and more aggressive Taliban as you see them today. And how much time it takes for the Afghans to sit together and to sort out their problems, anybody's guess. But as I said earlier, that if these four countries which I've mentioned and some others also, they try to help them, they will be able to bring out some sort of document or some peace process. But in
Right.
that, whatever the dispensation, Afghan Taliban will be a major stakeholder in that. And if they are wise enough, which I think they have learned their lessons, if they are wise enough to allow space for Northern Alliance, for Hikmat Yar, and for some other factions, which I'm
Right.
sure they will do. But they will not accept, in my opinion, I do not know, they will not accept Ashraf Ghani the people
But
around him
General
and
Modi,
Amarullah. Yeah.
right, looking at this new setup, let's say, we might be expecting, let's say, new setup in White House, new president, or perhaps this would continue. Would this bring any change to the Afghan policy, United States Afghan policy, if there's a new president in White House?
I think the style of talking may change, but the policy will not change. There are two reasons for that. One, that American policies are normally long term. They are made after a lot of deliberations. There's a deep state there which has a very wide base, not like us, not just one or two institutions. Their deep state comprises many more institutions, their think tanks, and of course the main part is their foreign
Right.
office, and then their Pentagon military establishment, then their military hardware companies, and of course the media and the finance institutions. So they have a very broad, deep state. So I think that the policy will not change. Of course, the strategy can change. That how to go about, doing that. So, and the other thing is that a line has been crossed, Rubicon as they call it. That has been crossed because now Americans are so thin on ground that if they try to do revert back and they break the whatever has been understood with the Afghan Taliban, they
Right.
might face something very bloody and something very bad.
Right, right. We'll take a break. And after the break, we are going to continue our discussion on the security situation in Afghanistan and Pakistan, the threat of Daesh, but most importantly, we see the presidential elections in the United States. And many people think that President Trump was pretty clear in his decisions of pulling out troops from Syria and Afghanistan. A lot of senior military officials back in US probably weren't happy with this idea of pulling out troops from Afghanistan and Syria. General James Mattis was one of them. He resigned, but we see that US is adamant on pulling out troops from Afghanistan. If, let's say, US pulls out troops from Afghanistan, what would be the situation, security situation and political situation in Afghanistan, and how Pakistan and the regional countries are going to look at this situation in Afghanistan? It is not very pleasant, certainly. Sporadic attacks, very rather frequent attacks by ISIS in Afghanistan, and also keeping in mind the resurgence of TTP, Jamatul Ahrar, and Hizbul Ahrar. These three organizations have merged, and they specifically focus on targeting the people inside Pakistan. This is going to be alarming. This is alarming. We're going to discuss about this after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. ISIS is a regional threat and a spoiler in the Afghan peace. We were talking about the role that ISIS is playing in Afghanistan, and also the resurgence of TTP, Jamatul Ahrar, and Hizbul Ahrar. Now, these three organizations have merged, and they focus on targeting Pakistan. ISIS and these three organizations, they are a concern not just for Pakistan, but for countries in the region like China, Russia, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan itself. What would be the security mechanism that the region is going to come up with? Ambassador Rizvi, this is a threat, as I just mentioned. Diplomatically and in terms of collaboration, how is Pakistan and other countries that I just mentioned are going to solve this issue and address this issue of security? How do you see this?
Well, you see, the main situation is that as we mentioned earlier, that there are the internal spoilers and then there are the external spoilers. The internal ones, of course, are those who have vested interest to maintain the status quo.
Right.
On the other hand, we also see that we have one of the main external spoilers is, of course, our next door neighbor in India. The position is that the country which is going to be most affected in case of peace in Afghanistan will be, of course, India. because they will lose their influence, despite the fact that they may have paid, or contributed billions for the economy and other, um, infrastructure, etc. So therefore, they have been the ones who have been really behind the IS and the Daesh to bring about disruption in the country, to bring about terrorism, to bring about hatred within in the Afghans, and to think that the Afghani people will blame this on the Taliban. And that is why you notice that when these attacks have taken place, the Taliban have been very quick to come back and make a statement that we do not involve in such actions. We are only against the Afghan army and the police. So the role is very clear of what is happening here, who is doing what here. Now,
Right.
so the first, and we also noticed that in the past, as I mentioned, you had Russia, you had also Iran. They have been now supporting Taliban, monetarily and also by hardware to fight against the Daesh, because they are concerned that these people may spill over into their countries also. So that is a fact that and on top of that, of course, last and not the least, China has been a very strong political supporter, moral supporter, economic supporter, diplomatic supporter for Taliban. So the Taliban were really looking forward to have peace in Afghanistan. And Pakistan has played a major role in bringing United States and them on the negotiating table to go forward.
Right. Mr. Rizvi, I'm going to move on to Mr.
What is
Basit.
important is, may I just finish?
Sure,
Just
please.
finish. The important thing is that we should not allow the regional countries to have a proxy in Afghanistan against other countries, because that will lead to a lot of bloodshed. So it is very important that we make sure that we are on one page. Iran, and we already know that China, Russia now, we are all on one page. It is the Indians. Now, it's interesting that some time ago, there was a parliamentarian in Kabul who made a statement that it is the Indians who are creating chaos in the country. And they are responsible for not wanting peace in the country. Now, if this fact now goes into the general people from there, then perhaps we will see the role of India, there'll be a sideline from there. Because we have seen
certainly.
that the people of Afghanistan, we saw the long marches and so on, they've had enough. They want to have peace. So let's hope that, this will now be felt more and more by other people, and they will not allow countries to come and stop the peace process.
Right. And Mr. Basit, talking about this situation in Afghanistan, we hope that Afghanistan doesn't become a hub of proxies, and probably this now era becomes the era of proxy wars in Afghanistan. We hope not. When we see that US is going to withdraw its troops from Afghanistan, but it looks like so. Looking at ISIS, and as I just mentioned earlier, TTP, Jamaatul Ahrar and Hizbul Ahrar, they have merged into a single group, and they have been carrying out attacks in Pakistan. Looking at the strategy, it seems like ISIS is going to target, it has been targeting the innocent people in Pakistan, and a recent wave of terrorism and attacks in North and South Waziristan on the security personnel, that is also very alarming, claimed by TTP. So TTP and ISIS, their operations and strategy, how do you think that Pakistan is countering it, is going to counter it? And we certainly need the regional support as well to fight these spoilers and these proxy wars, I would say.
Let me start in a different direction and come to your question. So you see, academically speaking, terrorism is a very loaded term. It's a label of convenience. Both states and non-states use the label for their strategic and other interests. The recent move by the United States of removing the East Turkestan Islamic movement, or the group that represented the Uyghur militants from the terrorist designated list of terrorist organization. It has delisted the group, that the group as such doesn't exist anymore. They have removed it. Now, if you look at the data, we clearly know that there is some residual presence of ETIM, or also known as the Turkestan Islamic Party in Afghanistan, particularly in the Badakhshan province. And there is a big number of them in Syria's Idlib province. Now, ahead of the withdrawal, now removing this particular group, which whatever level of threat it poses to China, clearly tells you which way the geopolitics is going, and the way terrorism is going to be used in this region as a tool for proxy warfare. So that kind of sets the tone. And then the second country you can just guess that is going to join this American move is India. Now, that tells you one story. Then is what your question, the story of TTP. So how is it that United States of America is removing a group, ETIM, from its list of designated terrorist organization? The timing is very, very suggestive. Equally suggestive is the reunification of TTP. Various groups have come together and they have started popping up back in the former FATA regions. So that tells you that how these various groups are readjusting their agendas, as well as relocating various theaters where they are going to be needed for the next phase of geopolitics, the way it is going to be in this region. Now, what do we do about it? I think the topmost priority should be one thing that Pakistan, to its credit, has done really well, that it is reaching out to different groups in Afghanistan. So Dr. Abdullah visited, then there was this visit of Gulbuddin Hikmatyar. I think that's the right step in the right direction of diversifying the ties with various groups in Afghanistan. So we have the dialogue going on and we build these bridges with various political actors in Afghanistan, number one. Number two is the regional dialogue then should focus that whatever happens in Afghanistan, there should be a mechanism in place to contain the chaos in Afghanistan within Afghanistan. So I think that's the broader agreement that you can reach to with Russia, with China, Iran, Central Asian republics that can be easily reached, the immediate neighborhood of Afghanistan. Once you agree to contain whatever happens in Afghanistan within Afghanistan, then the next step would be to, identify various proxies. And American vacuum has to be filled by someone, but what is going to be the modus operandi of counter-terrorism? How do you do it? So Americans were using drones. So is it drones that can be used, special operation forces, covert means of counter-terrorism? I think that is something that needs to be discussed, and I think the right forum for that would be the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. SCO already has a regional mechanism for counter-terrorism. This mechanism has already done various military drills. Even currently, the Russian forces are in Pakistan for some military drills, and there have been joint drills against counterterrorism. So the mechanism is there. All you need is a policy, and along those policies, what are the SOPs? So is it going to be a joint force where different regional states are going to, the way NATO was in Afghanistan? Will SC prop up a force which has representation of all the countries to jointly tackle the threat of terrorism in the region?
Right. So this is interesting. Jan Lodi, as the panelists, they just mentioned China and US-China rift, and also just ahead of the presidential elections, the decisions taken by the Trump administration that are also very interesting, looking at the status of ETIM, taking off the list from the terrorist organizations. So recently, the Indian Chief of Defence Staff, General Rawat, has said that they cannot rule out larger conflict with China, and this can escalate into a bigger conflict. So after this recent 2+2 meeting, this BICA deal between US and India, how do you see the strategic situation in the region?
Thank you. Just a word about this BICA deal. it is not a normal geospatial, information sharing that is otherwise available through GPS and such. It is military grade information which will be shared, which means this GPS gives you an accuracy of, let us say, 5 to 10 meters, and military grade geospatial thing, they give you half a meter accuracy or even less,
Right.
maybe maximum 1 meter. So that is the importance, which means that even a single vehicle traveling uh, in a far remote area can be tracked and hit because of this ability. So leave this aside. uh, what we are discussing is that after what all has happened, my own take is that post American withdrawal, Afghanistan, you will see a change. The change would be that space for these three groups which have joined, that will shrink. And why they have joined? Because generally speaking, terrorists operate better if they remain independent, if they choose their own targets, and they have a loose, you can say, understanding amongst themselves. But now that they have merged and tried to, operate in a consolidated manner, mean that individually they have been weakened for whatever reasons, whatever Pakistan has done to TTP and whatever things have been done to other two entities. So
Right.
I think, in my own opinion, that if, as you call it yourself, that it is a regional threat, and whenever a threat emanates in a manner where it threatens more than one entity, actually they create a problem for themselves, because they have the same potential which they have. So if they are threatening Pakistan, if they will be threatening China or even Afghanistan and Iran, so they mean they are actually forging an alliance against themselves. So I see their future bleak in Afghanistan after Americans leave, and after these their detractors are taken care of, after their supporters are taken care of. I think in the first phase, what will happen is that their supporters will be taken care of within Afghanistan, and that space will shrink. They will not find any place to hide, and then they will be taken care of by a consolidated effort of the region, as you say, whether it is SEO thing, or it is Iran, Pakistan, Russian, Chinese understanding with Afghanistan and all that. So instead of having proxies, which we had last time, because we
Right.
had divergent objectives, this time I think the objectives of the major neighbors, they are not divergent; they are converging, and that is the reason that I think this trio will be taken care of well and proper, and it will not take very long to actually eliminate them from this region. This is my take.
Right, right. And Ambassador Rizvi, about this statement specifically by General Rawat about the escalation of a conflict with China, and probably he said that this conflict can become a regional conflict. Now, he was also focusing on Pakistan and China both. How do you see the statement, and primarily India's approach towards this new dimension in the region?
Well, the Indians have had a defeat in their conflict with China back in 1962. They have a psychological kind of bag they are carrying on that. And now, more recently, as you know, there have been again skirmishes taken place from there. And again, Mr. Modi has lied to what actually happened there. The Chinese are in a better position right now from there. Now, they've had about 8 rounds of talks about on the military leadership there to try and have some kind of understanding. I believe there is a Chinese proposal that they are prepared to move out some distance near the lake in the northern areas and so on. But then the major problems still remain. But the fact is that the General Rawat is just trying to show a brave face, a bravado, to say that we can take on China, we are not afraid. And this, I think, comes in the background of the fact that with their aggressive posture and almost $70 billion on the purchase of hardware and development last year, by the military in India. And the recent agreement that they had, the Basic Exchange Cooperation Agreement, they feel that, they are in a position to take on China also. But they are not likely to, and they know that very well. They are all they want to do is to buy enough material and information and intelligence so that they can guard against Pakistan. And they know that all amounts of threats and so on will not, deter Pakistan to be able to stand its ground. And this is the main situation here. So we are not really should be concerned that they are getting all this equipment. We have a very strong relationship. And right now in the region there is a very clear-cut grouping. It is Pakistan and China, United States and India. And one expects that China, being a friend of Pakistan, knowing the danger that the recent military cooperation and intelligence cooperation that is taking place with the United States, with India, they will be able to help Pakistan also counter these measures. So I think the basic thing I look at General Rawat thing is more internal than outside. But finishing with that, I think like the Foreign Office mentioned, it is also a political statement. He'd be better advised to look after his army than to make political statements, and it also shows that there is a general creeping of the mindset of the Hindutva policy as well as the expansionist policy of Hun Bharat, which is not only within the political thing, but also going into the military side.
Right.
So we have to be.
Taimur, if you just allow me one sentence.
Right.
Just
okay.
one sentence.
Ambassador Rizvi, General Lodi, please briefly your point.
I just want to say that this lumping of China and Pakistan by India just means one thing, that take the name of China and accumulate a lot of military hardware, and if any escalation, it will be only against Pakistan.
Right. This is very interesting. Mr. Basit, your comment on this statement by General Rawat and the strategic balance in the region. Foreign Office is of the view that this Bika deal specifically has disturbed the strategic balance in South Asia. How do you see this?
Well, it does. It definitely does. It provides India certain advantages over us. So definitely yes. About the statement, I think if you look at the last 2 years, India took a beating from us in Pulwama, Balakot. Then they took a beating from China in the Himalayan region. Now the morale is down. They really have to show something, and I think this bravado is one exhibition of frustration, because this new position CDS was created. So this General Bipin, he has to show something, and I think there is this window for them of a false flag operation. I mean, time and again, the statement is in continuation of what their top military and political leaders have been saying. He has just repeated that. But the timing is interesting, as General Lodi and ambassadors have said. One of it is to justify the military hardware they have been accumulating, new contracts. So they have to justify that. Number two, to get more equipment. The other is, as I said, morale is down. So they want to boost the morale of their forces. The last one is, I think they do believe that now with winters coming in, there will be snow in the Himalayas. So the chances of conflict with China is low. So they have this six months window. I won't be surprised if they do issue more such statements in the near future. And I think we should watch out not only in terms of the consistency of these statements. It is coming also in the backdrop of the elections in Gilgit-Baltistan and giving it the status of a provisional province. So I think in the coming few months, we should watch out for it in terms of, if the military leadership is giving such statements, there should be more to it. Yeah.
Right. Very interesting. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. General Lodi, pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for your time. Ambassador Rizvi, thank you for joining us. Mr. Basit, pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining us. That's all from today's dialogue. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz.